Serious, what are some of the most mysterious unexplained events recorded in history? On the evening of February 19th, 1994, Ramirez, suffering from the effects of advanced cervical cancer, was brought into the emergency room of Riverside General Hospital by paramedics. She was extremely confused and was suffering from tachycardia and Cheyne-Stokes respiration. The medical staff injected her with diazepam, midazolam, and lorazepam to sedate her. When it became clear that Ramirez was responding poorly to treatment, the staff tried to defibrillate her heart. At that point, several people saw an oily sheen covering Ramirez's body, and some noticed a fruity, garlic-like odor that they thought was coming from her mouth. A registered nurse named Susan Kane attempted to draw blood from Ramirez's arm and noticed an ammonia-like smell coming from the tube. She passed the syringe to Julie Gorkinski, a medical resident, who noticed manila-colored particles floating in the blood. At this point, Kane fainted and was removed from the room. Shortly thereafter, Gorkinski began to feel nauseated. Complaining that she was light-aided, she left the trauma room and sat at a nurse's desk. A staff member asked her if she was okay, but before she could respond, she also fainted. Maureen Welsh, a respiratory therapist who was assisting in the trauma room, was the third to pass out. The staff was then ordered to evacuate all emergency room patients to the parking lot outside the hospital. Overall, 23 people became ill and 5 were hospitalized. A skeleton crew stayed behind to stabilize Ramirez. At 8:50 p.m., after 45 minutes of CPR and defibrillation, Ramirez was pronounced dead from kidney failure related to her cancer. Benjamin Kyle, man found behind a Burger King with amnesia. From 2004 to 2015, he had no clue who he was or how he got there. Finally, scientists found his name thanks to genetic records. No one to this day knows how he came to be in that state. We know, from accounts in several sources, that ancient Byzantine military forces attacked rival navies, and, rarely, armies, with a primitive type of pressurized flamethrower. Our best effort cannot, however, discern what they used for fuel, or how exactly they overcame the engineering problems involved. Lots of different theories exist, but none have been proven. We only know what it came to be called: Greek fire. The dancing plague of 1518. I don't understand how people died of dancing and couldn't stop. I will always believe it was fake, but it was widely documented. Disappearance of Brian Shaffer creeps me out. In April 2006, a guy is seen on CCTV entering a bar in Columbus, Ohio with friends, and is again spotted briefly outside talking to 2 girls. He then goes back into the bar and is never seen or heard from again. CCTV does not see him leave the bar, and there was no other way he could have left without being seen. The more I read about it, the more confusing and frustrating it gets to try and theorize what could have happened to him. Interestingly, a ping from his phone was detected 14 miles northwest. 5 months later. Edit. I had actually made a mistake in the comments below. The camera at the back door was not rigged to go off when it detected movement. Instead, it was a continuously recording camera that panned and zoomed when it detected someone coming through the door. So investigators could watch hours of footage and determine this was not the case here. The sea people that came wrecked Egypt's shit, then were never heard from again. We don't know where they come from or where they went. The Mary Celeste, found with no life or bodies on board, but with all cargo from the ledger still on board, likely ruling out piracy. None of the crew were ever found. Because I'm in an ancient Rome binge phase right now. The disappearance of the 9th Legion. Over 5,000 Roman soldiers stationed in Great Britain were never mentioned again in historical records after 120 AD. They simply disappeared from history. Considering that we have a respectable amount of primary sources for the losses of other legions throughout Rome's lengthy military history, this is a bit odd. Theories range from destruction and wars against local tribes to aliens, of course. Doctor Who even did an episode on them. The Shag Harbor UFO. Back in the 60s there was a huge flying object seen over the harbor in Nova Scotia where it hovered for a while and it crashed into the water, so in the morning all the fishermen went out to look for debris. Some people claimed to see lights under the water. So some people dived the next morning and they found nothing. Lights were later spotted underwater around the HMC Shelburne, followed by another underwater ship. Here is the article, if anyone is interested. Way more details than I can mention. One of my favorite ocean mysteries is the 52 Hz whale. It's a whale whose regular call is a very different frequency/pattern from that of any other baleen whale ever heard. So different that scientists aren't entirely sure what species of whale it might be, although it has a migration pattern slightly similar to those of fin and blue whales. One theory is that the whale is of unknown species, but is deformed, or possibly even deaf. Edit. The call sample on this whale's Wikipedia page is sped up to a much higher pitch than the call actually is. Here is the actual recording of the whale played at normal speed. The Voynich manuscript. Sure, maybe the language it's in is extinct, which is why no one knows of it, but pictures of plants that have never before been seen. The 1561 celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg. The events depict a giant space battle with carriers and dogfights. This isn't well documented anywhere, and has been reported to be a hoax. But it still fascinates me. In the early 50s, a guy showed up at Tokyo airport with a passport from a country that didn't exist called Tord. He had numerous world currencies with him, and pointed to Andorra when asked to identify Tord on a map. Tokyo authorities put him in a hotel overnight until they could figure out what was going on, and he disappeared from a guarded room with no trace. Some people call the guy a time traveler. I think, if he existed, he was some kind of organized criminal. I forgot a lot of the info about this one, but the music on the dark side of the moon, probably faked. Pretty simple story. During 1969, during the Apollo 10 mission, for 1 hour they had to orbit behind the moon. During this period, NASA lost touch with them, and they were on their own. At one point, they start to receive a whistling signal. When it starts, they begin talking about how it sounds like outer space music. The only concern is that they have no reaction to it. They just take it as something expected. The WOW signal. Perhaps the only possible extraterrestrial radio source we've ever received. It came from a barren area in the Sagittarius constellation, and might have been a passing spaceship or something, as it was never detected again. It got its name from the scientist writing WOW next to the readout. Personally, I would have written what in the actual duck. Harold Holt, Australian Prime Minister, went swimming in 1967. Disappeared and his body never recovered. No one is exactly sure what happened to him, but he was presumed dead. Not sure if most mysterious, but pretty interesting regardless. There is this one star. Kick 8,462,852. Seriously, who names these? That is acting pretty odd. We don't know what causes it. I recommend checking this TED Talk about it if you are interested. UFO battle over Nuremberg, Germany in 1561. The Nazca lines. People drew huge pictures in the sand that no one could see until hundreds of years later, when airplanes were invented. The Belgian UFO wave. Multiple distinct sightings of unexplained aerial phenomena by multiple corroborating witnesses across roughly 6 months in 1989 to 1990. Not saying this was aliens, but the extraterrestrial hypothesis cannot be ruled out, and it's a fascinating read. Jill Perez's teleportation. Here are some I'm fascinated by. The Salish Sea missing feet. 16 feet have washed up on beaches along the coast of Washington, United States, and British Columbia, Canada. It's likely most of the feet belong to suicide jumpers who've leaped off bridges into the water. Some feet still remain unidentified, as in nobody knows who they belong to. Terra Calico. While there are plenty of missing persons cases from around the world, this one is pretty chilling for a disturbing photograph. Terra vanished in New Mexico in September 1988. In June 1989, A woman discovered a Polaroid in a Florida parking lot which showed a girl bearing similar resemblance to Terror as well as an unknown young boy who appeared to be bound and with tape over their mouths and could be in the back of a van, in the trunk of a car, or in a room somewhere. Supposedly a windowless cargo van was seen near where the photo was found and was gone when the woman exited the store and found the picture. Not necessarily a mysterious unexplained event but surely creepy. Tunguska event in June 1908. A huge explosion decimated 80 million trees in a 2,000 km² area and caused no human casualties. It's theorized to be a meteor that disintegrated before it hit the ground because there was no impact crater found. I find that very interesting that such a cataclysmic occurrence happened, but we don't fully know exactly what it was. D. B. Cooper. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. The Battle of Los Angeles. The American military shot at UFOs hovering above major city. Currently it is the Starkik 8,462,852. It first made the news because of its mysterious periodic dimming. The first explanations were Dyson spheres, a cloud of satellites, a series of comets, and now it may be natural phenomenon that occurs when a star devours another. Still no conclusive explanation. The word duck is a linguistic mystery. It is a very common word in English, but we straight up don't know how we got it. A lot of words have some sort of trail. True, there are many words that have murky origins, but here's why duck is so odd. It's all over from the Pi family tree. Not just English. We don't know how those languages got the word either. The earliest use was in a macaronic text from the 1500s. There's some belief that it comes via Germanic and others that it comes from Latin. Germanic is more likely, but the key is we really don't know for certain. Thank you for watching. Like, share and check out other videos.